The small format revolution. And
Oh, all right.
I am, this is when we're getting those weird grades. This is undetermined, but shows promise. Like,
Okay, okay.
I don't know what I think about the small format situation.
Really? Okay,
I
that's kind
don't
of a
know.
departure for you, if I
I know
remember
you.
right. You
Yeah.
were
Yeah,
you
yeah.
were initially big on this, right, Ann? He was big on this, right?
Yes. This
I
one was
liked it.
summer school, maybe? Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying? Like,
maybe,
Yeah.
but it could. It's like maybe they need to just work a little bit harder. Like I am here. Let's think about the advantages, which I
hmm
think are super exciting, right?
hmm
So the idea that in theory you can be very focused and targeted, the idea that you can kind of have much more optionality in terms of where you're located. There's a tremendous amount of promise that offers. I just think from an execution perspective, that's so difficult to deliver on. So we look at things like, I think Bloomies is a really smart concept off of Bloomingdale's as like a really, it makes sense, it fits, it's not competing.
So do we. We think
I
so too.
understand that. I think it's
Yeah.
brilliant. I look at like small format and grocery, and it gives something interesting from the sense of like real estate flexibility. I want to be in certain types of
Mhm.
locations, but I can't fit my massive box in that location here, which is great. But do I think it really changes something? Does it force retailers to adapt too much? So in some of these spaces, I'm really excited by it. In other of these spaces, I think it has more to prove. And I think some of the early metrics of like visit growth there are very powerful signs of strength, but it's also a lot of it is this is a much more widely used concept. So it's one of these where it could be amazing, but it also could be, okay, this is nice, but it's not like really game changing.
yeah.
Well, Ethan, let's talk about that because you're bringing up two very interesting case studies here with this slide and in the conversation, right? And for those listening on the audio recording, later on that aren't watching the webinar too, he's got a picture of Sprouts growth here and their small format against Bloomingdale's. And so, to your point, like Sprouts to me feels like a different conversation because Sprouts is about finding the max, the whatever optimizes your ROI given the square footage you're going to put into that
Mhm.
space. That's what it's about. It's about optimizing the box that you currently have, the operation you have. Whereas Bloomingdale's is like, that's a new business venture. Like, let's go
Sure.
small. Let's get the Bloomingdale's into more countries or more communities throughout the country that don't have access to it. And so that's like a different step. And then you've got the Macy's side of that sitting in the middle, which is like,
Mhm.
okay, we already have the department stores. Where do we go with the small formats here? How do you think about it, with that framework or that lens, Ethan? I'm
So
curious.
it's funny because the Macy's and Bloomingdale's obviously, are, it's one entity, but it's what I love about it in the Bloomingdale situation is I do think it's for me conceptually it checks all the boxes. It brings this brand in a revised format to new places that it couldn't go before, and those ways limit its potential. So it kind of needed this refresh, and I think it makes a ton of sense in the way that it was distributed or executed. Excuse me. When you think about Macy's, I
Right.
view it much more through the lens of here's a brand that again has identified some degree of ceiling of what it can do with its classic format. And
Mhm.
I really appreciate and respect the, hey, we're trying new things. We're trying to see what works. And so this is one of those avenues to check out what kind of drives value for them and what brings kind of more success or more opportunity for growth and expansion over time. It's not as clear cut to me as the Bloomies Bloomingdale's relationship, where it does
Right.
feel like those two
Mhm.
exist on kind of like a spectrum of this is the evolution of the brand for specific audiences. And I think Macy's is still trying to identify what does that mean for them. And look, a lot, I mean, we're not doing a department store conversation today, but like, we always could. A lot of this is just like how do department stores need to change? Like,
Right.
Right.
what has to happen there? And I think that's there. So Macy's is poking at a lot of different places at once.
Yeah. And I think that you have to take into consideration too that Bloomies is an entirely new concept for this shopper that is driving traffic to come check out that concept. Like there's Bloomingdale's going small format, I think is a better apples to apples comparison than
True.
Macy's going small format,
Right.
where like Bloomies is something that no one's ever seen before. So I think
Right.
the numbers that we're seeing on the screen here make sense because people, especially people in that luxury market who are still spending money, are looking for like what will this new concept include and does that replace the need for a
Mhm.
full scale department store, Bloomingdale's? At least that's the way I'm thinking about it, Ethan. I don't know if the data is showing you something
No,
similar.
no, I think you're kind of nailing it on the head. And I think one of the challenges is you don't want to, like, there's lots of concepts that I got really excited about that clearly never panned out. And there's certain concepts that you're like, oh, this is never going to work, and then they don't work. And so you're still in those earlier stages. So we don't know what the result's going to be. We're going to find out. But I think there are ones where, again, watching from the outside, I put a lot of my chips into the middle of the table on Bloomies.
Yeah. Right. So I'm curious though, because you kind of hedged on this in the intro. You were saying like, kind of this is the summer school portion of the presentation. So why the hedge then? Is it because like, because people like Macy's are going after this too, or others are trying to replicate the same thing that makes you kind of say like, hey, we still need to understand this more. There's differences between Sprouts approach, Bloomingdale's, Macy's. Like, what's your thoughts
Because
there?
I think part of it's happening a lot, and
You're hearing the conversation a lot.
Yeah, you're hearing the conversation quite a bit.
Yeah, you
but
are.
I think where I'll use an example of a innovation that I really I wasn't in on at all, which is like, I didn't like Just Walk Out. I thought Just Walk Out had very specific applications, but I thought at wide scale currently, maybe something in the future, but it doesn't. I didn't get it, right? And I felt like there was a ton of buzz, and that buzz was bigger than where the short-term application would be. And so that's where I see this too, where like there's something here, but I don't know that we know why that thing is, and therefore to actually scale it, you have to know exactly what it brings to the table, and I don't know that we know exactly what it brings to the table yet.
So said another way, the phrase small format may be getting too much attention in the media. That as a phrase, as a concept, as a strategy point?
Yeah, it's like, there's a nugget there, but if you don't know why, it makes it difficult to scale that. Like, that's the biggest challenge for any business around any concept, is you do things where you stumble onto a success. But if you're not able to clearly delineate why it was successful, and you can't expand it the way you want to.
Great point. It's not that it's a small format, it's the right format.
Yeah, 100,000%.
What do you got for us next?
Well, I wasn't gonna...
There it is. Ding, ding, ding.
I couldn't.
I waited this long. My God.
I couldn't. It's so funny because when I was putting the deck together, I was like, well, I'm not gonna not include it. I love it too much. But I am coming at it with a different angle. I'm coming at it with, I am, as you have stated, I am among the very, very bullish about the potential and promise of retail media in the brick and mortar environment. I think, for all the reasons we've discussed ad nauseum, I think the mentality of the consumer, I think the potential to engage with them when they're close to the point of sale, I think all of this is very exciting. I think it maximizes the marketing and advertising value that they bring to the table. I think there is a huge upside and opportunity here. With that said, I think there has always been risks, right? There are risks like, is this annoying, right? So, think about online ads early on. You kind of get showered with pop-ups. Like, that's not a good experience. Could this hurt? I think it's a problem. I think it's a fairly manageable problem. There is the issue of it not being kind of physical oriented. So like QR codes that take me out of the physical experience and have me looking at my phone while I'm in a store, I don't love. I think that removes the power of the kind of the advertising experience within the physical environment. Again, fairly small problem, not one that really concerns me. But when we were looking at numbers, when Costco announced that they were kind of launching theirs, and we were looking at the distribution of stores for Costco, Sam's Clubs, and BJ's, and then we were also looking at Wawa's expansion within the South Florida area, it was kind of triggered for me what the real concern is here, which is it's too disparate and it's too inaccessible. So there are a lot of players who are like, yeah, I get it. I get what the promise is. I love the idea that I could say, hey, I want the 300 Costcos that have this type of demographic or psychographic mix, and that's where I want to advertise my product. That is tremendous. But if I have to go to Costco, and I have to go to Walmart, and I have to go to BJ's, and I have to go to, Ulta, and I have to go all these different companies, I can't scale this. It's just not how these businesses work. It's too much going on at the same time. And there is this risk that we waste the buzz and the excitement and the energy that's being put into it, and we don't catch the wave at the right time, which doesn't mean it won't happen. It'll happen. It'll just take a lot longer than it needed to. And the shame of it is, it means retailers are going to miss out on the opportunity that exists in front of them over the next few years when it's something that could be realized much faster. And the biggest question is going to be, how do you make it very easy for brands and agencies to access those networks? Because when you look at just how disparate it is, it's not conducive to easy access yet.